Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Independence Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum in advance of the November 8th elections. I'm Jeff Fox. I'm the editor of the Examiner, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Thank you for coming out. Before we start, I would like to take a brief moment of silence in memory of Gene Edens, an Independence firefighter who died in a car crash last Friday. Thank you. Our thoughts are with his family, and we thank him for his years of service to our community. Again, thank you for coming out this evening, and for those of you watching at home or wherever you and your device happen to be. Tonight's format is simple. Candidates will have 2 minutes each for opening statements, 2 minutes to answer questions, and 2 minutes again at the end for closing statements. A timekeeper is seated at the front row. Two timekeepers will see at the front row. They will not hesitate to enforce what needs to be enforced. Actually, we've done these throughout the year, various races. We've seldom had a problem. That is much appreciated. 2 minutes is a decent amount of time. Anyway, 2 minutes for each answer. And there are timekeepers up front, so, stay on the right side of them. There are two people on the ballot on November 8th, for an open seat on the Independence City Council. They are Mike Huff and Bridget McCandless. Both are with us this evening. The Chamber has gotten many questions from its members and others, and we won't have time for all of them, but I'll try to work through as many as I can that cover the topics that people raised. First, we will have opening statements, and we will start with Mike Huff.
Yes, my name is Mike Huff. I was born and raised here in the city of Independence. I'm a son of this city. I love this city. I've worked here my whole life. My family all lives here. I worked at Power Night for 35 years, retired from there. Was on the council for 4 years, 18 to 22. Right now, the city council voting up there has been a lot of status quo lately, special interest. A voice of all the citizens needs to be heard, and I am that voice. Are we the people willing to have our voices silenced? I don't know if everybody's been watching the council meetings, but it's been a little crazy up there about this. There's people up there not wanting the citizens to vote or speak at the beginning of the meeting. They wanted to shove it to the back. I spoke out on this. Another thing that really has been bothering me is, do we want the checks and balances of this council? Someone to silence your rights. Of these, not even letting you speak to elected officials. Who will represent your rights to control the council? We have opposing voices protecting you. I have the voice that shows that I am a fighter for the people, and my record shows that. I was a council member, and everything I had 29 resolutions. That's more than any council person ever, and it was for the people. Some of the people on the council are status quo, and they're involved in a lot of managing secrets. We have to have the political will if you want change. I will be that change for you, the people who count. Thank you.
And an opening statement from Bridget McCandless.
Hello, my name's Bridget McCandless. I too have lived in Independence for 50 years. I have had a long career here, a career of service. Some of you may know my background. I'm an internist, and I was in private practice for a long time, followed by running a free health clinic in Northern Independence. Did that with a group of fantastic volunteers. And then I was recruited to be the CEO of a large regional health foundation, where I really learned to polish my skills in partnership and collaboration, because that was the key work that we did there. I retired a couple of years ago to take care of my father while he passed, and had one vision for my retirement. And then our friend Karen DeLucci passed away, and I started thinking who might be willing to run for that seat. And after thinking about that for a while, I realized it needed to be me. So when you run a campaign, you spend a lot of time knocking doors, and I did. And interestingly, a lot of people said, do you really know what you're getting into? I think so. I know that there are going to be great days. I know that there are going to be really hard days when you have to take very difficult votes, when perhaps we can't come to consensus on the council, when you have to decide things that are going to disappoint someone. But at the end of the day, I want this city to be the city my children want to come back to and live in and raise their families. And that takes deliberative effort and intentionality to think about a city 20 years from now, not just a few months from now. My dad always said, there's no complaining. If you want things to be better, you need to go out and do the work. And I'm ready to do the work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. Now we'll move to questions. We will toggle back and forth as to who goes first. This first question will first go to Bridget McCandless. This came up in a lot of the submissions from folks sending questions into the chamber, so we'll just dive right in. Homelessness is evident on street corners and main thoroughfares across Independence. How would you address this? What services are needed that aren't currently being offered? Even if some homeless camps are just over in Kansas City, what can Independence do to work with Kansas City on the issue of homelessness? Bridget McCandless.
2 minutes is a very short time to answer what is an extremely complicated question. Homelessness is not a single face. There are a lot of faces of homelessness. If you think about the bus stop that's at the pay-by-the-week motel, those are children who are homeless. If you think about the gentleman that I met over at Community Services League who's 75 years old and has recently been priced out of his apartment and now lives in his car, that's another face of homeless. Then you've got chronically homeless. Those are by far the most difficult folks to get into services. I do know that we have some great organizations working on this issue in our city. What we need to do is be sure that we have a coordinated effort so that the people who are working on that are sharing their time and talent and treasure, so that we're not duplicating services, so that we have a coordinated effort. Some of that means working to keep people in housing already, because that's the cheapest solution, is to make sure people can stay housed. The city has the opportunity to really work in some coalitions with Kansas City, with Jackson County, with other surrounding municipalities, so that we can qualify for grants. This is an issue that requires time and energy and a focus from the city. It can't just be one of the 15 things that are on the plate. You need a staff person who helps coordinate that and drive it with some serious metrics around that. We have some services. I certainly understand people who are concerned that if you are too kind, more people will come to Independence. But they are moving back and forth. They don't really care what the border is, whether it's Kansas City or Independence. Pushing one way and having the other city push the other doesn't solve the issue. I know that we're asking a lot from police and codes and parks. I think we need to be sure that we are attending to this in a thoughtful way. Thank you.
Same question to Mike Huff.
Yes, it is a really tough issue. Of course, we have the mentally ill out there that needs to be addressed, which, I mean, we're, as far as the city, I don't think that we have that the resources to do that so far, but that's something that needs to be looked at. We also, the drug rehab, the job training. Training is a very important thing. And then we have to decide what is chronic, the people that we can get out of this situation. There's some out there that just, that's the way they want to live their lives. There's, like I say, there's mental illness. You know, the ones we need to really go after is the ones that we can get back into the system. I heard the other day in a council meeting that that's all they need is to change their mind. I didn't quite grasp that, because I don't think it's that easy that we just change our mind not to be homeless or to be homeless. You know, my biggest deal is the workforce training. I worked on that for a couple of years when I was on the council, and it takes a lot of resources. And the mental illness, like I said, that's a tough one. But we have a lot of drug addiction out there. We also have a lot of laws out there and resolutions and stuff like that, ordinances to enforce, try to keep this city a little bit cleaner, the trash and everything that these individuals leave out there. If they choose homelessness, then that's their choice. The ones that are not choosing that, then we need to help. But my biggest point, in which I've done a lot of resolutions on, is the trash issue. And I think it really looks bad for the city when we pull up to the 23rd and at Lee Summit, or 40 and Lee Summit, and there's just trash everywhere and bags of stuff. And that's the biggest issue I have with that. Just really looks terrible for our neighborhoods, and it definitely declines our property values. Thank you.
And we'll come back with a question that will this time will go first to Mike Huff. The question is this: a proposal is being developed to narrow Noland Road north of 23rd Street to one lane in each direction, plus a turn lane and bike lanes. What is your position on this?
I am totally against that. I've lived here my whole life. I can remember when Noland Road was a one-lane road. And we had all this traffic in the schools and everything, and so we made it 4-lane. Now we want to cut it back down. I think that's just crazy to even think that. You can go up there to Christmas and ball games and stuff, and the traffic's horrendous. Anytime we have an event up on the square, we have traffic everywhere, and now we're interested in cutting this thing down to 1 lane and a bike lane. And, you know, I have a real hard time with the bike lane. I'm for physical exercise. I might not look like it, but, you know, I have a hard time spending all this money on a bike lane. I don't even hardly see people use the sidewalks down there. So, but I am totally against reducing that lane.
Bridget McCandless, Noland Road.
If you look at the national data, traffic deaths and pedestrian deaths have skyrocketed in the last several years. And one of the things that I've noticed when I was knocking doors is almost everybody complained about speeding. Speeding in their neighborhoods, speeding on major thoroughfares. They asked about speed bumps, and they asked about increased police patrol, and they asked about cameras to be able to give people tickets. We can look at what the best road science is, and there have been communities that have really looked at how do they, without using their police, manage transit corridors that are really big, like Noland Road, that were designed not to be a street, a thoroughfare, because it has all of these pull-offs, entrances, and exits. You want people to be able to go to those businesses, but to be able to manage the traffic in a reasonable way. So going down from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, obviously 2 directional lanes and 1 turn lane, has been tried in a lot of other cities and has been really successful in managing road movement in a safe way without adding a lot of stoplights. You know, we have to be willing to try something new. Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's always the best way. The other is we've got a great partnership available to us from the federal government to help us with sidewalks and curbing and working on what shared transit might be for this area. I have a car. I'm very lucky to have a car. I don't know that my kids are necessarily going to want a car. I think they may end up being on public transit. They live in cities with great public transit, and they're kind of embarrassed that we don't have good public transit here. There are more and more people who are going to want to use that amenity. These are the kinds of modifications you make so that that can happen. And if we hate it, we can repaint the road in 5 years. We are perfectly capable of doing a traffic study if it turns out that it's a terrible idea. Thank you.
This question goes first to Bridget McCandless. Question 1 on the ballot on November 8th is a renewal and an increase of the Jackson County Children's Services Fund. How do you believe the fund impacts the City of Independence? How familiar are you with its impact on childhood mental health in Independence? And what do you propose that we do to support children in Independence who have experienced trauma and homelessness?
So the Children's Services Tax was introduced in 2016. It was a 1/8 cent sales tax. And normally, I'm not a great big fan of sales tax because they really have the highest burden on the people with the least amount of money. But this fund has been used to serve 64,000 kids have received benefits from what we passed in 2016. So in Independence alone, it's brought $2.5 million in for mental health services for our kids in the school district, with CAPA, which is a child abuse prevention agency, Drum Farm. It's done respite care and suicide prevention and help with homeless teens, and has been an excellent addition to our arsenal of tools. The pandemic wreaked absolute havoc on the mental health of kids, and if you talk to teachers, those children are really suffering and struggling in school. This is one way to boost the amount of money that we have to support agencies that are doing excellent work in the community. So I really strongly encourage us to think about question one. I think it offers a lot of benefits to Independence.
Mike Huff, the Children's Services Fund.
I'm also for that. Anything to help the future of the city, of the world, actually. So, you know, whatever we need to do to help that, definitely in favor of that. We need to break the chain of homelessness and all that stuff. So, yeah, I don't have any problem with, you know, I'm all for the kids. I'm all for the future.
The moderator apologizes for trying to get as many questions in as were submitted, and therefore loading them up a lot with two-parters, and we're going to do it again. Granted, you know, 2 minutes is not always a lot of time, but anyway, this will go first to Mike Huff. It is reported that Independence Power and Light has lost money in the past year and faces challenges with adequate generation when required by the Southwest Power Pool. If elected, how would you approach dealing with these two major issues?
Well, first of all, I have to laugh because Power and Light is not losing money. It's all about the accounting. Something that was pushed here probably about a year ago is that the city decided that they wanted to change Power and Light and use all their funds for the city benefit, which is totally against the charter. But what they have done is they have changed what we call FERC accounting, which is done by utilities. And what it does is it stretches out the depreciation of the power plant and the closing of both the power plants, actually. So all this is taken into account. This is not a loss of revenue or loss of money for the city or for the Power and Light. What is this? This is an accounting thing, and it's like your house. If you have rental houses or something, it's like 27 years to depreciate your property. In the utility industry, it might go to 50 to 60 years. And so what we have done, and which I was totally against, is letting the city go back to using regular accounting for the city's benefit. And what this has caused, there's no way that Power and Light loses any money. It's impossible. Number one, you have a rate. And number two, you have what we call the fuel adjuster. And the fuel adjuster is the most important thing of your bill. And if you see that, I believe I looked at one today, it's up to 4 cents. This is the protection to keep Power and Light from ever going broke. So, you know, because figures don't lie, liars make figures, is the way I look at it. And there is no way that Power and Light is in the red at all. And that's just my stance on what we need to do out there. I think we need generation out there. That's about it.
Bridget McCandless, Power and Light, revenues and power generation.
So Independence Power and Light is owned by the city. It's kind of a unique arrangement. There aren't that many public utilities. If you look at our neighbors, Evergy is the corporate entity that runs the electricity for Lee Summit and Blue Springs in Kansas City. That puts us in a wonderfully unique position that we determine our own future. The things that people want are affordable rates and reliable service. But if you look at our finances, we have eaten up a good portion of our reserves, $15 million last year, $9.4 million this year. We are actually following FERC standards, which are the national standards for accounting for utilities. We are part of the Southwest Power Pool, which means that we put our energy in and everybody else puts their energy in, and then everybody turns on the spigot and uses the energy that they need. So we contribute to the pool, we take from the pool. That means that we're responsible for either purchasing or generating a certain amount of energy to meet the needs of the city. So right now, about 2/3 of the energy that we have are from relationships that we have with Iatan and Nebraska City. So we're buying external energy from coal-fired plants. And about 1/3 of the energy we would be able to generate here if we needed to with combustion turbines. Those are aging. And so we have really big, expensive questions on the horizon. The city council gave a rate reduction and gave a rebate recently out of the reserve funds. So we have fewer reserve funds around to be able to decide what that future generation is going to be. We obviously can't continue to operate at a deficit. This is a big investment for new turbines in a rapidly changing environment with really different perspectives on how you approach energy. Is it green? Is it not? How does that balance work? We need a portfolio to be able to do that. And that requires a lot of diligence and thoughtfulness. Thank you.
This next question we'll toggle back to Bridget McCandless going first. There has been discussion about a new Justice Center to replace the police department building over the hill, which is nearly 50 years old and has numerous issues, does not provide a quality work environment for employees. The police chief can tell you all about that. Would you support the construction of a new Justice Center, and how would you suggest it be funded? Bridget McCandless.
If you spent some time visiting the police station, I can tell you it's in deplorable condition. The roof leaks, they have raw sewage issues. It was not built with women in mind, so they don't have a locker room. It does not suit the IT needs. We actually funded additional police officers, but there's nowhere to put them. Their training station is inadequate. So we really need to think about what a first-class police station means for us. It doesn't just mean a new building. It means safety, because the current arrangement of our holding cells is not safe for the prisoners, and it is not safe for the police. So there's safety issues. There's also recruiting issues. If you can be recruited for the same amount of money and you can go to a place where they have invested in your training and your facility, you feel valued. If you come look at Independence, not so much. It's 1970s technology or building environment. Paying for these is not cheap. There are a lot of tools out there that we can use. We can use bonding. We can use leaseback arrangements. I think with some creativity, we can actually solve this issue. It is one that has safety implications and recruiting implications, and we're going to have the conversation around how we get there.
Police building, Mike Huff.
Yes, like every city building that we have, we do not maintain our buildings because of lack of funds. The Justice Center that is being proposed is over $1 billion. I don't think the citizens here can afford something like that. We had a police scandal the other day. I thought our jail was up to par. We spent $1.3 million with the police officers working there. I'm totally against the Justice Center because I don't think that we can afford it. I think that the building we have needs to be brought up. Like I say, we don't have enough money to fix it. So now we're talking about $1 billion Justice Center out by Power and Light. I just don't get it. I don't know where these resources are coming. I always hear about all these grants and all this money coming in, but the other part of that grant and everything is you have to have matching funds. And this city doesn't have that right now. Our revenues are down. We're suffering here. So with the virus and everything else going on here, we have businesses leaving here. We have very few coming back in here. So, I mean, I guess I'd be for it if somebody has some gold pot out here laying around that they can afford this. But at this point, the city can't afford $1 billion justice center.
This next question goes first to Mike Huff, and it actually picks up on something you just touched on. Some people are worried that retail businesses and independents are struggling, especially at Independence Center. What can the city do to support our businesses?
Well, that's interesting. I was involved when I was a council person with the Independence Center, speaking about worried about them leaving here, being closed down, sold, whatever, foreclosed. They had some great ideas about having where Sears is having a golf thing there, and at the other end a hotel, and kind of making in between some eating establishments and stuff like that. As far as bringing businesses here, I've been very involved in that. I brought Ray's here out of Blue Springs. It's been very successful. I do have one tragic one up here on the Gee Hall building that I worked with, me and a couple other council people, to bring this company here. They were going to employ about 600 employees to start off with at $30,000 was the starting wage. They went to the city, or actually went to the can't think here, the development and economic development, and we were promised a lot of things, and the guy the owner of this company said that he would be interested in coming to the city if they could provide that, and so he waited around, and now he come to the city for it. The city's ignoring him. Now he's going to leave. So we're going to have another vacant building because the city or economic development and the city can't get it together about what this man was promised. So once again, it's just tough to get these businesses here, and stuff like that is just not working out real good for businesses.
Bridget McCandless, local business. Dinner's done.
Thank
Okay.
you for your patience.
Yes, there we go.
I
Okay.
wrote down this last time.
So the concerns are about Independence Center specifically and business generally. Bridget McCandless.
So part of walking doors was actually walking and visiting with business owners. So I stopped at, I think, roughly 40 businesses and asked them, are there things that Independence can do to be a better partner to you? And I was actually heartened by people who said, you know, it's been a good place to have a business. They've enjoyed having businesses here. I asked, you know, is there red tape? Are there things that get in the way? Are there things that we can reimagine? They had some small things, and I really do encourage the chamber to go out and do that kind of secret shopping. Maybe that's not the right term, but visit with business owners who belong and who don't belong to the chamber to find out what things would make life easier. You know, the mall is a little bit challenging. Malls everywhere are really struggling. And I know that the city has been thinking about how it evolves along with the way that we shop. We shop online, we have things delivered. So how do we do fulfillment centers and retail that benefit from using electronic devices? Because that's as things are moving. I do have to give the city a lot of credit for the Innovation Center. If you haven't been there for a visit, what a phenomenal opportunity. In the old Independence Regional Building, they have taken a portion of the old hospital and have set up test kitchens and places for new businesses to incubate in there. With the encouragement, they will then help them find locations in Independence. So this is a long trajectory, but this is about homegrown businesses being supported by the community and then growing up to be bigger businesses in time. Now, do we have a lot of storefronts that are empty? Yes. Are those great opportunities for some of those new businesses to occupy? Absolutely. And that takes a lot of work, and back to being intentional, thinking about what a 10-year plan means. You know, bringing one cafe here doesn't solve the business issue. This requires thinking about the entire environment around business. Thank you.
This next question will go first to Bridget McCandless. What is your position on the city's breed-specific ban on certain pets, specifically such as pit bulls?
This is an issue with lots of emotion on both sides. In 2016, Mr. Hill suffered a terrible injury, and the city, in response to that, banned pit bulls. Like a lot of cities, like a lot of states. But in retrospect, as we have looked at the data around bites, around dangerous dogs, that good intention didn't turn out to solve the problem. It has also created some real challenges for our animal shelter. We no longer, people are not allowed to have pit bulls in the city. And so what's happened is either they have moved with their animal, who they didn't want to be parted from, or they hid their animal so it wouldn't be confiscated. But when pit bulls get picked up and taken to our animal shelter, they cannot be adopted by independence families. So they are there longer. Takes more money and energy to be able to support those animals so that we can adopt them out to Lee Summit and Blue Springs. Those communities haven't had a rash of injuries. You would have heard about that on social media. I think it was a well-intentioned policy, but unfortunately it both didn't solve the problem of dangerous dogs, because there are still dangerous dogs, and it created unintended consequences for good dogs who end up in the shelter for a long time. Kansas City, Kansas, Leawood, Kearney, Liberty, Wyandotte County have all rescinded their breed-specific legislation. The CDC, the American Bar Association, the ASPCA all say it doesn't work. One of the hardest things when you're an elected official is to say you got it wrong. And so it's time for us to really think about whether this served the purpose we intended it to. Thank you.
Mike Huff, BSL and pit bulls, what do you think?
Well, on the pit bull issue, my opinion really doesn't count. I'm a constitutionist. I believe in that 4,000 people come up with a petition. They ban pit bulls in this city. It wouldn't matter if it was chickens, goats, donkeys, a gallon of milk. I don't care. It's about that these people worked for that petition. I disagree with Bridget on that. About this dogs in the different cities. I read an article yesterday where somebody got 2 kids and a woman. The 2 kids were killed. So, but it could also be a German Shepherd. It could be anything. I'm not disagreeing. That's not the idea here. It's that this city's people signed a petition to keep them out of here at this point. In order to change that, they need to bring 4,000 signatures or put it to the people to vote. I don't have an opinion. I'm a dog lover. I've had animals my whole life. And that's not my issue. It has nothing to do with the pit bulls. I believe in the way this country's built, and that is democracy. And we need to vote on this. People, if they're got this thing figured out, then that's fine. Let people vote. We'll see how that ends up.
Moving on to the next question, which will go to Mike Huff first. North Point, that project in the Little Blue Valley is the largest economic development project, at least as proposed, in the city's history. What do we need to do as a community to be prepared for all these buildings and these new jobs as they come online?
Well, first of all, I don't know how we're going to support them without a power plant. That's probably one of my main things about having generation here. We continue to push people into electric cars, which is for every car is just like a house. This country right now can't even provide power. If you look out at California place, they're without lights all the time. They have brownouts all the time. So now We're throwing the cars in there, now we've got 1 million square foot buildings down there. I don't know how that the city thinks they're going to support electrically these buildings. It's fantastic. I'm all about employment and that stuff. One other thing that bothers me that people continue to ignore, that the benefit of these buildings is for the jobs and everything. That is true, and for the schools and for the county. But this city is going to take a hit because the revenues from these buildings is $320,000. It doesn't even pay for infrastructure. It doesn't even pay for the police, a fire department. It's going to be a hazmat. You don't know what's going on down there. And it's just, it's pretty, I don't know, it's just not all clear. I'm here about transparency, and like I said, I'm all for that development down there as long as that we don't go bankrupt trying to get it here. I see many cities across this country giving away their properties, giving away everything. I mean, I was one of the council people that stood up for the eagle and the tree down there, the lake and everything else. I mean, I'm for the green space, but I also believe in the development of that area too. But I don't know. I just the way it's arranged and everything. I mean, these people come in here and saying that they didn't want any tax abatements, and now they're at the table getting tax abatements. Thank you.
North Point, how do we get ready for that? Bridget McCandless.
Are you guys ready? Okay.
The timekeeper must speak before we can proceed.
We've got two of them going.
Okay, so we think we're good?
All right.
I think we are.
Bridget, go for it.
Thank you. The city needs to continue to rejuvenate its industrial and business base. If you don't, as people age out and close their businesses, you don't have anything to replace it. And as I said, this is kind of the next generation of type of business that is coming to America. I'm not as worried as Mr. Huff about the energy needs. I know North Point has been very clear that solar is a big part of their plan. They want to use their rooftop real estate as a way to generate a big part of their energy. Roads are a concern. You add more people, you add more jobs, you also add more traffic, and you're going to have a fulfillment center there, so you're going to have transit with big trucks. So really thinking through the logistics of how you move safely people and goods through that area will be a big consideration. They did propose a CID, which means that they will be taxing the people who are tenants in their building, and as those sales are generated, they generate an additional amount of money to cover infrastructure investment. So that portion of things needs to be addressed because the city does not have a whole lot of money to go in and do infrastructure work. So I appreciate that they had thought far enough ahead to address part of that. One thing that I really appreciated is in their documents, they did an employment evaluation. And why did they choose this area? Actually, we had one of the highest employability scores, and that's why they picked Independence. And that really speaks to the future of bringing other businesses here. And I talk to folks in the trades, and they'll tell you, we have to go out of town to do our work. We live in Independence, but we have to travel to other cities. And we're hoping that those people will be able to live here, bring their kids to school here, generate tax income, and be part of our community. And so I really am looking forward to North Point, encourage them to be a good partner. Thank you.
So I want to give both candidates a clear shot at an issue that's come up a couple times, but I want to give them a specific window to this question because of power generation. We haven't really got in not much depth. And we'll go Bridget and then Mike. Earlier this year, the council had a proposal to buy some, we'll call it supplemental power generation, that right or wrong would have committed the city to another probably generation of fossil fuel use. Did the council said no. The question is, did the council get it right in saying no? And then what do we do next? Bridget McCandless.
So the council was brought a proposal for 2 aerodynamic combustion turbines that would have generated 70 megawatts of energy. So that's about little less than a third of our energy requirement that we are promised to the Southwest Power Pool. Those combustion turbines were refurbished. So think that they were stripped down and then rehabbed. That cut the price in half. So $70 million is a bit of change. And by the time you finance that, it's closer to probably $130 million. So that's a 30-year bet on technology that we have right now, because it takes that long to pay off the bonds. They did propose a combustion turbine that could convert from natural gas to hydrogen. Unfortunately, hydrogen production isn't quite up to snuff to be able to do that yet. But I'm actually pretty hopeful that we're going to see increasing investments in hydrogen generation so that we might be able to transition those combustion turbines. It's a rapidly changing environment. Energy is by far the thing that is transitioning faster than almost any other industry out there. And it's tough to make a bet on something that's been doing the same work for the last 30 years that socks the city into that. I know the hope is that we'll be able to make our own energy and sell it, and that may be the case, but we need a broad portfolio of energy opportunities so that we are able to both take care of the future and think to the future. What will future energy generation look like?
Mike Huff, did the council get it right, and what do we do now?
Well, I believe they got it right, because when I say I want to buy something new, I don't buy something that's 40 years old and been rehabbed. When the thing breaks down, it has a 1-year warranty. What kind of deal? So I believe the council did get this right. Green energy is also expensive, but that's the way that we're all going to go. One of the biggest deals I have with the combustion turbines is that we had a chance to buy dogwood out here, and we still do, at a very, very reduced cost, which gives us energy. And it's actually energy and not, can't get his thoughts here, where we just buy in blue sky. So that's the Oneida project down there that we bought into for $1.3 million a year, I believe, for 15, 20 years, that we get nothing for it. The generation deal, though, I do think they got it right with voting that down. My biggest issue at this point is that, we call it hedging. If we'd have bought into dogwood, we'd have probably had half of it paid for. Energy is gold. And in the future, it's even going to get more and more expensive. And I'm just wondering at this point why the council has not looked into asking partners, which everybody else says we're a partner with KCP&L with the coal fires years and years ago. So I don't understand why this council hasn't went out and reached out to Blue Springs or some of these other, Lee Summit, to be a partner to build a power plant here. So, something to throw out there. Thank you.
This one goes first to Mike Huff. The city council has recently debated new rules of procedure. One specific area is dealing with comments from the public and how and when those would be heard during the course of the meeting. I believe you touched on this earlier. What would be your ideas on how that should be handled?
Well, actually, it used to be at the end, and Karen DeLucia and myself got together on this and decided it needed to be moved at the beginning. And the reason why is because everybody would vote, and then all of a sudden at the end, hey, I got my comment. And by then it's too late because you've already voted. And so me and her got together and decided to change them rules. That rule was changed in, I think, 2019. A lot of the council members were really bummed out about it because they said, well, you're going to make our meetings very, very long because now everybody's going to sit there and they want to voice their opinion. We're going to be here for hours. Me and Karen stood up and we got our way with it, and it's worked out very, very well. I mean, the meetings do get long, but I put my citizens first. All you people count. You should be first, not at the end. And I was the one that voiced my opinion at the council meeting to get that changed. It was a resolution, and all the council, by the end of that night, after I made my speech at the beginning, which is right, all agreed with me except for one person. So I'm not going to go there. But our citizens are first here, and they should always be first.
Council procedures, Bridget McCandless.
You know, I appreciate hearing from citizens about how they feel about items. There are lots of different ways to run a city council meeting. Some places you speak on the issue just before it comes up so that those things are paired in time. Having a respectful and professional meeting really matters. So allowing people to come and speak to their council is critical, but the way that they behave when they do so also important, because that mutual respect allows for a real conversation and for people to move forward on substantive issues. I actually don't have any difficulty with how it's arranged right now. Thank you.
Had lots of detailed questions about lots of detailed policies. Let's exhale and do something a little more philosophical. First, Bridget McCandless, what is your definition of good government? See, that's the one that always stumps them.
No, that's a great question. Good government to me is a government that attends to its own house. It is thoughtful about its financing. It is good to its employees. It is forthright and honorable in its behavior. It takes the needs of the citizens into account and also can think about the whole. Because the issue that I have in my front yard is extremely personal to me. However, you also have to think about what is important for an entire city. So a power plant is an example of that, or excellent roadways. I may not like the way that my driveway affects that roadway, but I've got a lot of people to move. So long-term thinking, strategic planning, not lurching from council to council, really being able to put together 20-year plans around housing, around infrastructure, around business development, and thinking about the pieces, part and parcel, that you need to be able to accomplish that. At the end of the day, this is a large business enterprise. It's for the public good, but any good business is thinking about its long-term planning, its savings, its reserves, how it's growing its workforce, how it's investing in the people who are there. And unless you have that vision of what you want your city to be, you're going to be stuck with the city you've got. And it will, over time, decay and deteriorate because you aren't giving it the love that you need. I think that's the definition of good government.
Mr. Huff, what is your definition of good government?
So exactly what she said. So what has the city done? I haven't seen the city do anything. It's shrinking. It's not growing. So status quo here. You know, we have to change things. And just like when I started out on my entry, is that political will is the most important thing if you want change. And for good government, you know, if the people are happy here, then we're happy as people here. And you know, you go down that road and beat that drum forever, but I am appalled at the way that this city is ran, especially here lately. And I'm up here running because I want change, and I have not seen any change. This thing is status quo. We don't do anything here. We're just falling off the face of the earth. We need to step up, and we need to make things happen here, and so far I haven't seen it.
So I'm going to stick with this theme, and this goes to Mr. Huff first. Why did you decide to run for this at-large seat? Were you sought out and asked to run for it by anyone in the community, the independence community? And if so, could you elaborate on how that affected your decision to run?
Well, I was up there once, and I was kind of the outcast there because I believe in transparency and ethics in this city. I thought I was making some pretty good headway. Like I said, I had 29 resolutions, some good, some bad. Most of them passed. We had the reduction in rates. A lot of these people in there might not have to worry about the $6 or $12 reduction in their rates, but there's a lot of single mothers out here with children and stuff that bought them 2 gallons of milk, a loaf of bread. You know, I'm doing it because I love this city, and I'm a son of this city, and I'm out here to make a difference. I'm not a status quo, as you all know. I've been there for 4 years, and I never sat up there and agreed with anything. Someone has to stand up and disagree. Karen DeLucci was a perfect example of that. She challenged everything, and I was right there with her challenging a lot. And so if we're all going to be status quo up there then and do everything by committees and play all this game, then I don't get it.
Bridget McCandless, what was that process like for you?
I didn't seek out this opportunity. I had a number of people who came and asked me if I would consider bringing my skills and talents to the service of this community. I had to do a lot of soul searching before I said yes, and more importantly, I had to convince my husband that this was a good idea. It has been encouraging for how many people have asked me to run, encouraged me to run, are delighted that I'm running. It's a lot of hopes pinned on me. I hope that I will do my very best to fulfill all of those wishes for a good city. But the other reason that I wanted to run is there's actually some dynamic energy happening in Independence. We had 4,000 new people by the last census, our first growth in population in 30 years. You have new kids in the school districts, and as I've been out walking doors, I have seen all kinds of people reinvesting in their homes, painting them, putting new roofs on, really spiffing up their neighborhoods. And I think that there is a growing optimism. You look at this regenerated Chamber of Commerce, how many new members they have, the energy that they're putting into the community. There's real potential for great things in Independence. We're affordable. We're close to Kansas City if you need to work elsewhere. It is just a place that people can go and have good schools and good neighbors and good neighborhoods. And I just really think that there is such potential. One of my friends said, you can stick with the city that is, you can stick with the city that was, or you can work for the city that you want it to be. And I think that there are people who are willing to do that.
So we've got time for one more question before we go to closing statements, and I'm going to be relentless on getting both of you to talk about yourselves yet more. Tell us what your qualifications are and what experience you bring to the council, and I wonder if either of you has a thought on perspectives that might be missing on the current council and what you could do about that. This question, the qualifications, what do you bring to the council, that goes first to Bridget McCandless.
You may say, wow, Bridget, you're an internist. You are uniquely unqualified to sit on the city council unless somebody like urgently breaks out with diabetes and I can step in. I actually have had such a unique background that I have learned something in every position and opportunity I've had. When I ran my free clinic, I realized that I did not speak spreadsheet. So I went back and got my MBA so that I would be able to have a good handle on reading spreadsheets and financial analyses and bond documents and investment documents. And I also got a degree to be able to work on public policy, because public policy is complicated stuff. The worst public policy is made by one side. The best public policy is made when people disagree and have to figure out where the compromise in the middle ground is. So that would be something that I'm able to bring. I have had the privilege of serving on many, many boards and commissions, so I have seen high-functioning organizations and poorly functioning organizations, ones that are so mired in the immediate that they can never do any long-term planning, ones that are so far in the planning they never take care of the business at home. So that perspective, I think, is helpful. The other is that with my work at the Health Forward Foundation, I have worked with more than 1,000 nonprofits in the state of Missouri and Kansas. So those relationships and partnerships and resources that I am able to bring would be really different than I think some of the city council people who are currently serving.
Mr. Huff, qualifications, perspectives?
Yes, of course, I was on the council for 4 years, from 18 to 22. Also, I was a city employee for 35 years. I know how this city operates. I know its ins and outs, whether people want to listen to that, because a lot of them don't want to believe the truth of how this place operates. What I bring forth is transparency, which is my number one thing, and integrity. I think that's lacking. Seeing some new faces up there that now all of a sudden we don't want people to speak, stuff like that. I'm just totally against. I'm running, and my qualifications, my voting record shows who I'm up there for and what I'm about. So that's it.
Very good. That closes the questions. We will now go to closing statements. Again, 2 minutes each. Mr. Huff went first at the top, so Bridget McCandless will go here as we close. 2 minutes.
You will not always agree with me. I have a very strong independent streak. But what you'll know is that I do my homework, I listen to learn, and I will act with integrity as I have done in my previous positions. You know, my key approach is intentionality, like I said, setting long-term direction that transcends election cycles. As I've talked to people at their doors, these are the themes that have come out. I have had more than 3,000 conversations at the doors. People want to feel safe and connected to strong neighborhoods. They want beautiful public places and roadways. They want a thriving business environment. They want the city to have stable finances. And they want the city to be in the news for the very best things. So I would be remiss if I didn't stop and give some thank yous at this point. I want to say thank you to the good people who work for the City of Independence and bring their A game every day. I want to say thank you to the people who volunteer to make the city better, who serve on boards and commissions and tax oversight jurisdictions. And I want to say thank you to the people who open their doors and talk to me about what they hope for the city. I'd also like to take a minute to invite you to do a park cleanup at McCoy Park coming up this Saturday at 9 in the morning. We're going to take out some brush that's in the waterway, so wear your water shoes and bring your work gloves because it matters and beautification matters. We want that area to be gorgeous for the upcoming Halloween parade. So I invite you all to join us.
No worries, no worries. We've got like 2.5 minutes for your 2 minutes, Mr. Mike Huff, 2 minutes.
Okay, this city is at a pivot point. We've seen in the last 6 months what has brought us. My concerns, checks, balances, and progress in our city moving forward. It's so important for the future of Independence, and what matters to me is you. We're seeing the cost of living increases, but government does not worry about our day-to-day family, day-to-day. What I want is the best for you and your family. If you're doing well in Independence, and Independence is doing well, I will champion you, and I'm asking you to be your champion. You're all my friends, family, and neighbors. I am here, and I will fight for you. I ask you to vote for Mike Cup. Thank you.
Very good. That closes out the statements and the questions. I want to thank the candidates for coming out tonight. We've had a good exchange of ideas and comments, and I want to thank the candidates for just doing the work of holding themselves out for office and knocking on doors and listening to folks. I want to thank our timekeepers for soldiering on. That is a thankless job. No, truly. Technical issues aside, it is a thankless job. I want to thank the folks who came here tonight, the folks who are watching at home for taking part, taking an interest. And if I may, we need to thank the Chamber. I think we've done 4 of these this year. It felt like a long year, but the Chamber has been steadfast throughout in making these things happen. Polls in our state open at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they close at 7 o'clock in the evening on Election Day, which is November 8th. Please exercise your right and go vote. Thank you. Good night.